I think the key question that's been coming through a lot on the Q&A is basically about digital exclusion, or enabling digital inclusion. So I'd love in the short Q&A that remains, how do we reach and provide services for those who cannot use digital services? Are there alternative processes? And we had a really interesting question, which was about how to support children and families impacted by parental imprisonment, which is a real area of social exclusion. So I'm going to, I want to start with Kirsty, who's particularly onto this, and then other people, if you can put other speakers put their hands up, then we can hopefully get through quite a few responses before we run out of time. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'll be super quick, and following on from kind of Frank's use of kind of banks and what banks do actually. So one of the things we're really thinking about in Newham as part of our kind of family hub planning for the future is around the use of community connectors. They may not be called that, but that's what we're thinking. So if you think about back in kind of 2014, when kind of some high street banks were starting to think about how the elderly will use the apps because they didn't know how to, and how elderly would use online banking. What we've really been thinking about in Newham is how we use kind of our community. As I said, we've got 140 different languages, so the community members that will speak in multiple languages, and how we get our kind of digital eagles of Newham, which kind of Berkeley had in 2014, to go out into the community with the tech and really start to show families, especially where language is a barrier as well, how they can access the support they need. So I think that's one idea about building upon what we know works, you know, nationally in a kind of bank environment, and think about how in Newham we can do that better. So it's kind of community connectors is one thing. I think the importance, and I know Irene, you said it about Nottinghamshire, definitely Newham, it's not just about the devices. So, you know, lockdown, 2,000 devices delivered across the borough. And then we realised that the internet was a big issue and Wi-Fi was a massive issue, so we're back to square one. So in Newham we've launched, I think September 2021, the kind of, it's called Newham Sparks, and it's a kind of borough-wide initiative to think about how we really are a catalyst around kind of the data and digital world, and how we support some of our most disadvantaged residents, which we have many in Newham. And I think leading on to that, the real importance about this isn't just about children and young people service, this is about a whole partnership response across the council. So resident services, regeneration, community wealth building, space, environment, it is everybody's business. So within Newham we've got the 15-minute neighbourhood approach, and as part of our family hubs model, it's really building against that 15-minute neighbourhood, how we can make sure everyone in the community has that. And I think lastly, just the importance of libraries. So again, we have a great infrastructure with our libraries. Any of our families and any of our residents can touch down in a library, and the libraries are trained to support our families to access the help and services they need. And just to add on to that, again, linking to the language barriers, libraries are such a massive resource. They can bring in books in different languages. They have access to such different resources that maybe some of us don't at the moment. So I think the importance of the use of libraries to break down some barriers and to access maybe different groups that we know some families won't come into family services, I just think is probably the fourth point I wanted to cover around that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kirsty. And Simon, there are a couple of questions on the chat for you about digital inclusion / exclusion. Do you want to add anything to what Kirsty just said?
Yeah, and I think just in general, I think somebody made the point before that what we're not trying to do is to be exclusive with digital tools. I mean, it really is a tool to kind of help things. And really for us, it was about resource reduction and trying to kind of manage how we do things more kind of effectively and efficiently. I think we will always need some kind of an engagement, a face-to-face relationship approach with families, because I mean, in Brent we get a lot of refugee families coming in. If you don't speak English, you have no clue how education system or support system works, etc., etc. You're not really going to go online, I think, and kind of try and find the family hub and go and access services there digitally or whatever. You're relying on a kind of a partnership approach, and it really is a partnership approach to other professionals bringing in these families into the centres. And then once we make contact with them, we can support them with different ways with digital inclusion, whether it be a laptop or getting a dongle for the internet or whatever, upskilling them. So I think we just have to remember that these are tools. They're not exclusively replacing what we had previously. And in Brent, I think I said that we can have families quite often rock up to the centres and you know, they haven't registered, they haven't booked onto an activity, but we'll support them to kind of, you know, with registration and with booking. And if they can't do that themselves, they can phone, or they can just tell us and we'll book that for them whilst we try and put that support in place as well. So I think that's just quite important to note. It's not replacing completely what we were trying to do before with a relationship engagement approach. It's a tool to help us and help other families as well.
Thank you. That's great. And just, would anyone like to say anything about the children and families impacted by parental imprisonment? I know Barnard has done a lot of work on this, but it might not be something Joanne's knows a lot about. But the particular question was for Irene, because she was so vocal about apps.
I wish we did have an app. I did see the question and thought, oh, if only. I mean, we do a lot of work around prisons and supporting families prior to somebody coming out of prison. We do that, but we haven't actually done anything around digital yet. But then that piece of work is fairly new. So I think we will look at it. I mean, obviously it's part of the family hub type arrangement, so we will look at it. So I'm really glad it came up, because it was something that hadn't even crossed my mind, if I'm honest.
Well, that is very honest. I think that we're going to have to. We could talk about this for a very long time, but what Irene's kind of finished on is something that has struck me again and again, which is this is very much a learning journey. Presenters talked about continual tweaks, and that sense that we're polishing and polishing, and it is very agile, as Mitesh mentioned when he was talking about the government approach. So we might be coming to the end of this webinar, but it's about developing digital tools, not having some kind of static offer that we're aiming for.